Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome to the Think Factory's Workplace podcast, powered by OGC Solutions, the podcast where we explore the ever-evolving landscape of workplace dynamics. My name is Alka Bahal. I am a partner with Outside General Counsel Solutions and the chair of our Corporate Immigration Services Group. I'm your host today. I'm very pleased to have with me Valerie Chianuri. Valerie is a legal and operational expert with more than 2 decades of experience in financial and technology industries. She's currently the general counsel and head of people at nTop. Welcome to the podcast, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
My role at nTop has evolved over the last 3+ years. I started out as general counsel. I eventually took over the information security team and then ended up with overseeing HR and IT. So I have a big bag, very mixed bag of responsibilities, which I'm extremely excited about. But I started out as someone in finance and then an attorney, so we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about nTop first. How big is it? What do you do?
So nTop is a late-stage startup and computational design engineering space. We focus on helping companies with software that can solve their most complex engineering problems. So anything that requires precision, speed of design, speed to manufacturing, we provide software that does just that. We believe that the current solutions lack in that type of capability, and we are very unique as a pioneer in computational design and parametric modeling, and also leveraging AI for manufacturing. And nTop is about 100 people. I've been there, as I mentioned, for a little over 3 years, and it is a wonderful, wonderful place.
That's very impressive. Sounds very complex, the type of software that you're dealing with.
I don't know enough about it. I just know enough to be dangerous.
Oh, you and me both. So tell us a little bit about your path. What brought you to this sort of GC head of people position?
It was a very indirect path. For anyone interested in doing what I did, I suggest they don't, unless they are interested in a journey of self-discovery through many, many mistakes. I started out, as I mentioned, in finance. I'm a first-generation immigrant, and when I was finishing high school, my parents really insisted that I go to college for a career that I can pay my bills with, and that's kind of the pragmatic approach that I think many people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So I double majored in finance and management, and I started my career in finance at Deloitte, and then proceeded to do some regulatory compliance work at American Express. This was all before going to law school, which I just realized that a lot of folks who I worked with in compliance at Amex, they were attorneys. I felt like to move forward in my career, I needed to have that grad degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my son, so I figured, why not? I wasn't sleeping at night anyway, so I could read a book.
Yeah, a book or two. That's how you got there. Awesome. Really impressive.
Thank you.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Circuitous path, but I think it's really interesting to hear about it. So you have a baby, you've decided to never sleep, you're going to law school. Where'd you go from there?
Full disclosure, I had a very, very good support structure with family and friends. So they took turns while I was going insane. But yes, after law school, I was trying to find a job with the law firm. The economy wasn't great, so I bounced back to Deloitte, so this time doing regulatory tech work and just risk assessment. So everything that basically provided companies with risk exposure in their tech sector, basically IT, reg tech, kind of, this was nascent stages at the time, but really what companies realized, even in the non-tech space, that they had exposure and they needed to be more robust with their technology stack. And then I kind of fell into the startup world because it was fun, it was interesting, and I thought that, it provided opportunities that large companies or law firms did not at the time. It's not a knock on any of those institutions. I'm sure they work for many, many people. But for me, it was just, it seemed like a natural next step in order to be creative with my career and my path and just having fun while doing serious work.
So you really like the hands-on work. Obviously, you're a GC, you're head of HR, you're overseeing IT, a lot of technology aspects of it. So it kind of seems in your career path, you moved away from finance and compliance seemed to speak to you.
Yes. So I still love to do legal work. I still love to do kind of, I think, spot the issue and law school exams is probably the most useful thing in my career in terms of kind of how to solve business problems. So if you want to think about solving problems, whether it's from the legal perspective or HR perspective or any other perspective, but I just truly enjoy building and helping people who build things create companies and watch them grow.
Nice. You've been described as a, quote, roll up your sleeves, unquote, leader. Can you share an example of when that type of an approach made all the difference for you?
I think that it's just generally the approach that I take as my default. Sometimes it's good to step away and delegate and trust the people that I work with, which I do, and I think I have amazing people on every team that I supervise. I don't know what I would do without them. But in terms of rolling up my sleeves, I think that sometimes it takes collaboration and it takes stepping up and doing work side by side with the people who are doing the work and figuring things out. I feel like I'm a problem solver by nature. So, a good example of that would be trying to figure out, how to properly implement due diligence in our company and making sure that we work with customers that we absolutely, love working with, but also that we are safe while doing so. And, my team will get me solutions and they will bring something to the table and we will then dig through and I actually will ask questions and then if I'm not sure if the answer is the right answer, I will go digging myself. So I will end up being that kind of pain in the butt boss sometimes who shows up with my own answers to meetings, but I hope they don't hate me for that.
So you know everything, right? You've got those employees who are like, oh, we better find it, or Valerie's going to find it instead.
I feel the eye rolls coming every once in a while. Yes. I can't say I know everything, but I try to learn everything, and I know the eye rolls are there.
That's hilarious. So you've worked both in smaller startups, which is, I think, where your passion is, but you've also worked in large enterprises. What are the biggest differences in how you would approach either legal or operational challenges in each?
Large enterprises are far more structured. Everyone has a defined role, and people, even kind of in difficult times for organizations, for larger organizations, during restructurings or during, economic turbulence, people still kind of have an understanding what their role is, and they will operate within that role, right? So they have a managerial structure, they have people that they work with, they know who's responsible for what, or at least they can refer to an org chart or something that gives them a clue of who to go to for that. Startups are chaotic, right? It's kind of, in the best case scenario, it's organized chaos. In the worst case scenario, it's a disorganized chaos. So approaching legal issues, I think, in a larger organization, you do research, right? You kind of write up your documentation, you do your analysis, obviously thoroughly, and then you present that to either a committee or you present it to your manager. And in a way, there is kind of a decision-making process that follows a certain pattern every time. Mm-hmm. In a startup, yeah, you do your thorough research, but sometimes you're it. You are the person who has to figure out what the decision should be. And, even in my case, where most of the time I reported to the CEO of the company, like at nTop and in my previous roles, I'm still the one who's basically the expert and who gets to take the risk, make the decision, and, sometimes take the fall for the decision that I made.
That's how we learn, right? You learn by making mistakes.
It's the best teacher.
Yeah, exactly. And the most unforgiving.
Yes, but I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of making mistakes. I can talk about that ad nauseum.
So, what is your process when a company hits a major operational or legal roadblock? Where do you start? How do you guide your team through that uncertainty?
Always start with context. I think I don't know if it's an attorney kind of a brain, but sometimes we think we know the answer, but we don't.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important to get the context because for businesses, especially for startups, context always matters because sometimes it could be, an easy example would be we received this demand letter about potential intellectual property infringement, and this was a couple of years ago, and our immediate response was, oh, this is probably a patent troll. We know how to deal with those. And then the more we dug through, the more a different picture emerged. It was somebody who was probably misguided by a friend or, somebody who advised them, and they reached out in a way that was very aggressive. And it was really kind of a baseless, meritless claim, but it wasn't somebody who kind of did that for a living. They weren't just kind of trolling different companies and trying to get money out of them. So the initial conclusion was not that, but it took a lot of digging to get to that point and to know how to appropriately answer that. Similarly, sometimes business context will dictate a lot of the ways in which we address a hurdle, or in which we try to deal with a customer situation, or whatever it is. I think context matters. Context is king.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. How do you ensure that your legal and operational strategies are aligned with the long-term business goals? I think that's really one of your fortes, right? You have that bridge between the business as well as the operation and the legal. So it's probably second nature to you. But how do you sort of think about that in the context of the legal issues and the operational issues?
I think the most important way I can frame it is that we are a support organization. We are here to provide a support structure to ensure that the business is running smoothly and minimize the risk in that process. I don't see the legal function as being kind of the one that puts up roadblocks, right? The Department of No, or the business prevention department, as somebody once classified it to be. That's not the way that it's supposed to go, right? I have a very customer service oriented mindset in that regard, right? And I always say to my team, like, look, guys, it's an extreme example, but I always say, like, if we're a small company, if somebody asks me if I can, if the floor needs to be mopped, right, I will mop the floor. not because I have to or I think it's part of my role, but because I'm part of a larger organization. I'm part of a larger cause. So we're all contributing in different ways. But taking that a little bit back, our organization is a support organization. We're there to make things happen. If it's not illegal or unethical or against the laws of physics, we have to figure out how to make it happen while educating the business side and the risks. And then we make that decision together. Are we willing to take that risk? Are we willing to move forward with the decision given everything that we know?
Yeah, very interesting. So you have your own, there's that, leadership style about being hands-on and being part of the team. If you need to mop the floor, you'll be the one to mop the floor. I love that. I think leaders like that get a lot of respect from their team because you're willing, right? You're willing to do whatever you're asking them to do, which I think really makes a big difference. So how do you, different leaders are different, right? Not everybody leads in the way that you do. How do you think that leadership styles influence workplace dynamics? And do you think leaders need to adapt their approaches to different teams or situations? Like you've worked in a lot of different organizations, different teams, big organizations that are structured and small startups that are not. Do you find yourself adapting your style, sticking with your core style, but do you adapt at all, or do you kind of train the team into what your style is?
I think it's a hybrid approach because you can't be rigid as a leader. And I think that leadership is potentially what could make or break an organization. There's that famous phrase of fish rots from the head, right? So
Mhm.
I do adapt. I try to. I think the really important thing to remember is there is a human on every side of the interaction, right? And if we don't remember our humanity and the humanity of the people we interact with, which is so easy to forget when we're just slacking and emailing and chatting and we're not always face to face, but there is a human on the other side of it. And I try to, and I hope that my team, if they ever hear this, they will agree with me, but I really hope that it comes across because I think that for companies where I've been, where leadership was either insensitive or unempathetic or just plowed through, people's lives or careers
Mhm.
or just discarded people, those were not good places to be. Ultimately, this is not where you want to be. And I say that with all deference to the fact that startups are very dynamic.
Mhm.
Startups have evolving needs, they pivot all the time, and they are frequently kind of they live through many lives before they find who they are, before they get out of that teenage phase and they get into actually being more stable companies. But in that process, I think it's really important to have empathy and to really understand how to deal with people.
It's very true. Fits in with a theme that I hear more and more often nowadays, where in the current environment, we recognize people bring their whole selves to work, right? You're the same person at work as you are at home. In the old days, we used to try to leave our home selves at home and our work selves at work and try not to have them influence. But the reality is, you are who you are. And if things are bothering you at work, they're going to bother you at home. And if they're bothering you at home, they're going to bother you at work. And we need to recognize that, not everybody is going to have a stellar day every day.
Yeah, and it's also become more prevalent since the pandemic because we kind of got stuck. Many of us got stuck in front of our computer screens, so our home
Mhm.
lives and our work lives merged in this weird mix. So people have their cats on their screens and their dog tails wagging behind them and their kids climbing their shoulders, and that's part
Mhm.
of life now.
Right. And that's just the way it is.
Exactly.
No
So
need
I
to.
think, yeah, no, I agree.
So, what do you believe are the 5 key traits that would be essential for effective leadership in the workplace today? We've got hybrid, we've got in person, we've got home life affecting work life. We have 5 generations of people working in the workforce now, which we'll talk about more in a second.
I think the starting point is always have empathy. Empathy, understanding of, again, I go back to there's a human on the other side of it. And I think that's a good grounding force for, everyone. Um, Professionalism. We sometimes get kind of wrapped up in our own whatever it is our own stuff is. And I think people, again, kind of everybody becomes a little bit of a keyboard warrior in today's environment with hybrid and remote and stuff like that. Um, do do what you promise to do. So if
Mhm.
you said you're going to do something by a certain time or a certain date, do it. Um, and I think those are the top three ones. I don't know if there's five feels too much. Like I have my own ML. I feel my
Mhm.
own. I have my own ways of how I do things. But I think just being empathetic, um, being professional and doing what you promise to do. I think those three are kind of top, and then everything else will fall in its place, hopefully.
That makes a lot of sense. How do you think at this point, right? We're post-pandemic. We talked about hybrid versus, working in person, which seems to be sort of a permanent fixture in the workplace now. And we've embarked on a historic moment in time where we have 5 different generations ranging from, I don't know what they are, the Gen Zs to the boomers, right? From the early 20s into the 80s even. How do you think that affects the culture of a workplace, and how do we need to respond to that? Because communication styles across these multiple generations are very different.
I think I'm somewhere on the cusp between a Gen X and a millennial. I'm in that gray zone. And I grew up in what used to be the former Soviet Union, so I grew up in a household with no phone. Then I remember our first phone being installed, one of those rotary on the wall phones. And
Mm-hmm.
then I witnessed the internet. I lived through dial-up, and
Yeah,
Napster, if anybody knows what that is.
I remember it. Yes.
LimeWire, Napster. And now we're here, and I could talk to AI and they can create a document for me. So I think I'm very, very lucky in that regard that I witnessed all of it and I got to live in the world with no social media. Thank God I was in my 20s or my teens when that was not around. But I think it's definitely an adaptation. It's an adjustment because it's sometimes difficult. I don't even know if it's a remote or hybrid issue. It is definitely an issue for cross-generational and people with different backgrounds trying to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It used to drive me up the wall that people could not type with punctuation. It's just a thing, right? It's I
Mhm.
guess it's a Gen X thing, but people would type and I'm just like, where are your capitalized letters? Where is punctuation? What is going on, right?
That's me
And
too.
and then you adapt. And then or you type back in a way that you prefer and then somebody else adapts. But I think there's certainly an adaptation process and a communication process that needs to happen over time. And I think it's not easy. And I think it's just being deferential and making sure that we are focused on what needs to be done, right? What's the end goal? At the end of the day, we have a project to complete or we have something to do. Um, Keep the goal in mind. Don't get mired in details. Don't get mired in, who didn't use punctuation or who didn't capitalize something or who abbreviated every word in the sentence and you have to decipher it. Who cares, right? What's the goal? What are
Mhm.
we trying to accomplish? So I think that's just kind of focusing on the important stuff is one of the more important aspects of that, and just staying productive and respectful and making sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, very interesting. So, for your current workforce, you have employees all over the place, right? You have a fair amount of remote employees. You have an affiliated entity in Germany. So you've got a hybrid work environment.
Correct. We do. We have many employees who are fully remote. We have hybrid, and then we have our headquarters are in Soho in Manhattan, and we do have quite a few people that come into the office.
And so, how do you think this affects the culture of your workplace? Do you find you have to make more effort to do things online to, bring these people together, or is it happening organically because the teams are mixed?
Um, it's tricky. I
Mhm.
think it's actually very, very tricky to make sure that everyone feels included. And I know that this is an issue that we are tackling still. We're trying to figure out what would be the best approach. We are now more focused on trying to bring people to the office at least for each team at least once a quarter
Mhm.
so that everybody has a chance to be there in person, to interact, to get to know their team members, get to have, a slice of pizza or a beer with them, and just to kind of understand who they are as a person more than just kind of a face on the screen.
Mhm.
But it is still tricky to make sure that everyone feels included. I feel like it's kind of an ongoing project, and we still haven't fully cracked the code, but we do try to do, like paint and sip events. And, if anybody's available in the area, go to the Mets game or whatever it is, we try to get people together to the extent possible because remote is good. And I think it really gives people a lot of flexibility, but it could be very alienating for the folks who are working remotely.
Yeah, that seems to be the constant challenge, and leaders are trying to navigate these days. And I like that you're honest about that. We're trying to figure it out and figure out how to do the balance and how to get everybody incorporated because it's challenging. You've got multiple states, you've got multiple countries, time zones, a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, it happens even on my own team, right? I have team members who are here in New York and or in the tri-state area. I have team members who are in California, and it's always a mixed bag, especially for people in California. They also have to work with folks in Europe, right? So they're up at all hours because of the time
Mhm.
difference, and I sometimes feel bad at the same time. Work needs to get done, so we figure it all out.
Yeah, work in progress, always a work in progress, right?
Exactly. No perfection, just the
Uh,
process.
I like it. If you could go back 20 years and give yourself one piece of career advice, what would it be?
Stop listening to other people who tell me what's good for my career.
Hmm.
I think I think it's really good to hear other people's advice. I don't want to kind of be so intense about this, but I was very, very deferential
Hmm.
to everyone who had a piece of advice to give me, and being young and uncertain about where I was going, and also not being amazing and in what my chosen career at the time was. It was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, and I was kind of a little bit like unmoored, I guess, in a way.
Hmm.
Um, and I think sometimes people know deep down in their gut what they want to do, what they want to be, and they don't move in that direction because of in either external pressure from family or opinions by managers or bosses of what they should be or what they should be doing and what the smart or quote unquote safe thing to do. I think just be figure out what you're passionate about and pour your energy into that passion, and truly, yes, good to listen to advice, good to understand what other people do or what they think. Take that advice, don't internalize it, just have it in your pocket as something that could help. So that would be my biggest piece of advice for myself.
Do you think if you had listened to that advice that you would have sort of refined your career approach earlier?
I don't know. That's
Yeah,
a
it's hard
very
to
good
say.
question.
It's
It's
really
so
hard
hard
to
to say.
say because it's always a what if.
Of course, if it's kind of like a tree, right? You have many branches, you could climb any branch, and you could potentially be a total, abysmal failure or a raving success on any of those branches. And who knows?
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to be an art history major. And
Oh,
yeah, that's when I got a call from my grandmother from Ukraine, who was still alive at the time, because, obviously my parents called her and she was a huge influence on my life. And, I went into finance. So I don't know. I don't know.
hard to say, hard to say. It's also from my viewpoint, being a child of immigrants as well. I feel like being an immigrant child is part of that component as well. We tend to internalize what our elders tell us maybe more
Absolutely.
than others do, right?
Absolutely. And I obviously embraced the exact opposite approach with my own kids. So I'm probably living, in a way, living vicariously through him, like many parents do. But I'm just like, do
Yeah.
whatever you feel passionate about. Go forth. I'll pay for it.
Exactly. That rebound approach.
Yep. Full on.
What predictions do you have for the future of work in your industry? Say over the next year, 2 years? I know things are moving quickly these days.
Yeah, it's this one is tricky. Obviously, I feel like anyone in my position right now would feel compelled to talk about AI, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, our company does a lot of work now. We're starting to with AI. We just published something that we did with one of our customers, an AI project that actually could help them generate multiple parts for manufacturing. So I do think that in our industry specifically, AI and manufacturing processes that are supported by AI or parts that are generated through machine learning methodologies or artificial intelligence will be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think that manufacturing processes, especially with everything that's going on in the world right now, they will need to catch up. And I'm seeing initiatives across different organizations and different political spectrums talking about um, creating additional modernized manufacturing methodologies. So I think that within our industry, specifically as it pertains to engineering that supports manufacturing, that's going to be big. Anything that speeds up the engineering processes, speeds up the design, speeds up procurement within larger organizations and government entities, that stuff, I think there's going to be gasoline that's going to be poured in that fire.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
In
And
terms of just over, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, and in terms of just overall, I think our workplace is going to look very different, probably 5, 10 years from now, not just because of AI, but because we have, a larger generation, baby boomers, I guess. They're exiting the workforce. They are working longer just from the demographic perspective. I was just
Mm-hmm.
listening to something about that. But eventually there's going to be also a generational demographic shift of people in the workforce and how technologically savvy they are. Obviously, somebody who's 15 years younger than me or 20 years younger than me is so much faster in picking up new tech and the way they work and the way they engage with technology. And, I'm just there trying to figure out how my microphone works. So I think it's just going to be an acceleration in learning and adaptation of new technologies, and just generally things are just going to keep moving faster.
Yeah, that sounds about right. A part of what your software does is also predictive modeling, right? To understand if you're going to build it this way, what is the outcome? What are the shortfalls, if you will?
Yeah, it helps. Basically, what it does is it part of it is part of getting those designs out and optimizing the designs and providing different iterations and different models is to allow engineers to see what would be the optimal design for the part that they're trying to create. And then one of the features that we have is they can look at a part and say, okay, well, this doesn't look right. And then they can point on the screen to that part, and it will take them back to the code that is responsible for that particular part. And they can actually modify the code to see how the part will look with that modification. So it's very interesting. Again, I'm trying to explain it in the terms that it was explained to me by one of our
Hmm.
brilliant engineers. I
Something
hope I
basic
hope I
that we
did
can all
I hope
comprehend.
I hope I didn't butcher it.
It'll be really interesting to see how AI is incorporated into that. And as you said, pouring gasoline into the system. I imagine it's going to be 10 times more sophisticated a year from now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I mean, it's also there. We also have limitations with chip capabilities. So the chip
Mm-hmm.
capabilities have to keep up, right? We have a strategic partnership with NVIDIA, so we're very dependent. Our technology is dependent on their GPUs or on robust GPUs in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's many companies that have similar capabilities that we do. So we are very much hand in hand with that industry. So we're watching it carefully. We want to make sure that that industry is successful as well.
Right, because that feeds into your success, absolutely.
Yep.
And what about for you personally? What does the future look like for you? Ideas for growth, expansion. I understand, if I recall correctly, you added yet another new aspect to your roles besides taking on the compliance team, security teams. You're now also responsible for government relations?
Correct. Yes. This is the one that I'm definitely new to. I'm learning on the job. I'm trying to do my best to figure things out before they hit me in the face. But I this is definitely a growth opportunity for me. I'm very excited about this because I think that with the customer base that we have and with kind of who would be the predominant users of our technology, we feel like government and government prime contractors are a target audience for us, and we need to really understand how that sector works and how the decisions are made, how people, it's a very different it's a very different ball game than the private sector. So I'm trying to learn the ropes. That's my big growth opportunity. I I had a law school professor who unfortunately passed since then, but he always said the day you stop learning is the day you die. And I just want to live every day.
That's definitely what it sounds like you're doing, Valerie. Always taking on new challenges, always learning something. You're going to need a very, very, very big closet for all the hats you wear.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
So tell our listeners where they can find out more about nTop and where they can reach out to connect with you.
nTop is easy. It's ntop.com. We have a wonderful website. It has case studies and little demos, and it is very interactive. So if anyone wants to go to ntop.com, they can find out more about our technology there. And if anyone is interested in reaching out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Valerie, Valerie, and the last name is Chianuri, Chianuri. And I'm there. I repost lots of wonderful content from our company and any job openings and any opportunities. And anything and everything that I'm interested in, you guys will see there.
I love that. So I have one last question for you, Valerie, which I did not prepare you for when we chatted, which is, what keeps you up at night?
My cat.
I love it.
Jokes aside, I can answer the question seriously. I think I'm always a little concerned about kind of the recent situation in the world. I'm Ukrainian. There's a war going on. There's a lot of stuff happening geopolitically that gives me concern. So I think just the world that my son is entering, and I think our collective kids are entering. I think it just as a parent, not just as someone of my descent, but as a parent, I always worry about what world is my child going into. So I think that generally speaking, that would keep me up at night.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me today, Valerie.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Same here. Thanks, listeners, for listening to the Think Factory's Workplace podcast. I'm Alka Bahal from OGC Solutions, signing off until next time.